Hey everybody, I want to talk about a topic that I've been honestly thinking about for about 8 seconds now. Measuring the toxicity of a toxic relationship. So we overwhelmingly in the support groups that I'm in, I hear the term toxic relationship thrown around a lot. Toxic people, toxic this, toxic that, toxin, but when it comes down to it, you think, well, am I in a toxic relationship, right? So I mean, it's a term that's real easy to tell others, and even hearing it and processing it and learning these things about toxic relationships. But then when you think about, well, am I in one? Maybe it's just mildly toxic, or who knows, right? Another good example is, boiling the frog. You put a frog in water and you heat the water slowly and you can boil the frog to death, right? I mean, if you're the frog, how can you measure the temperature of the water you're in to know that you're in boiling water, right? And so I've got a few key observations that I have sort of assembled in my head to sort of help people figure out if they're in a toxic relationship. So I think symptom number one is the very fact your very presence in a support group, your very presence on this channel is a big indicator where there is a problem big enough to warrant dedication of time, energy, and resources towards its resolution. So the fact that you're here means you either were in one, are in one, and don't want to be in a future one. Same thing is true of support groups. Once you start researching, that's your number one symptom right there. You're researching to figure out what is wrong with you or wrong with this person. But just being in the state of mind to do research to solve a relationship problem in and of itself isn't enough to confidently, I guess, quote unquote, diagnose the toxicity or to even measure it, right? Because everybody has difficult times in relationships. So just because you're researching and trying to figure something out doesn't necessarily mean that it's not fixable, okay? Things just might be bad for a while. So how else can we sort of measure toxicity on some sort of scale and make some sort of diagnosis? And I think the second biggest indicator is this. Normal relationships tend to flourish more when you keep a healthy space from each other. You have separate spaces. You have separate hobbies, separate interests. You don't want it to go too far, right? But just when you dedicate some time to yourself, pick up a book and read it. Join a group or a club, book club, hobby, whatever, pottery, something to express yourself in your own personal time. This is not going out to the bar and drinking. But if you're a guy, go out with, have some time with the guy friends. Guys need guy friends to hang out with and do stuff. I wish I had some, but I don't. Girls, you want to avoid doing the girls' night out thing. Don't do it because it's easily a red flag. There are other things as a girl you can do that don't involve a girls' night out. It's up to you what you want to do, but it needs to be an activity that you're dedicated to. One of my favorite recommendations is jiu-jitsu or some other type of self-defense course. Self-defense in general is something that everybody benefits from. There's absolutely no real reason to say, you know what, no, I don't think this is a good idea. Like, self-defense courses are always a good idea. So long as it's, so I'll preface this by saying as long as you have a good instructor. There's plenty of really bad self-defense classes out there, so do some research. But yeah, when you spend time apart, it needs to be, and this is crucial, right? Because when you first meet, you're, I guess, John and Marcia, right? John, Marcia. Marcia loves John because John is John, and then John loves Marcia because she is Marcia, right? When you're first together, when you first meet and you first start doing the doodle, that's when it's hottest, that's when it's the most enjoyable, but that's also when there is the most space between you, because you've just met each other. You're attempting to draw each other closer into your personal space. And now this is key, and this is something the author talks about in this book called Mating in Captivity. And that is, once you move in together and once you become a serious relationship, living together, roommates, spouse, husband, and wife, you're no longer that erotic lover who comes in the night. Ha ha ha, see what I did there? You're now, this is awkward to say, but you're more of a family member than you are an erotic lover who comes in the night, right? And I don't mean this in an incesty kind of way, but kind of sort of a cousin to it, in the sense that this is somebody you see every day. You're tight-knit with this person. There's no mystery. There's no thrill. It's because that person they're more of a family member to you than they are an erotic pursuit. They're part of the family. And so with that kind of sort of comes a lack of enthusiasm, right? So to keep things healthy and going, and this is how a lot of relationships end up getting sabotaged and suffocated, is you get too close, this family dynamic starts to come into play, but then you're still trying to actively pursue somebody as if they're, the erotic lover who comes in the night, and they're not. They're like right next to you, and you're like up in their face, trying to, get them. It's like, dude, I'm right here. See what I mean? So you want to back off and give your partner space to be your partner, right? Because a lot of, and I think from the male perspective, I can speak from the male perspective, because as a man, especially as a father and a husband, that becomes your identity. You're the father, you're the husband, you're the provider. You wake up, you go to work. See Exhibit A. But you lose your identity of being John, Bob, whoever. The guy who likes to go out and shoot pool and drink beer and play football and play soccer. All of those individual pursuits. In your life, it's real easy for your life to become a job. Same thing if you're a woman, especially if you're a mother, you become mom, and that's your job, that's your identity, that's your life. You're no longer Marcia, you're mom. You're sweetie, your babe, your wife, right? So you become mom wife, and the men become, dad husband, right? You have to continue your individual pursuits. You have to continue these activities that define you as an individual, separate from your relationship. And that is what makes a relationship healthy. That's what keeps the relationship alive. breathes air into it, because now that there's some space, there's some room for some oxygen, and both of you can breathe. So all of that, to come back to this point, if you start, if you feel like you're in a suffocating relationship and you two are suffocating each other, give this a shot. You know, take some self-defense courses, take yoga classes, do something that is a third space. And if it continues to make things worse, if the addition of individual spaces makes things worse, not better, then that's your symptom that you're in a toxic relationship, because then you will be with somebody who has an insecure attachment and who wants you to dedicate your life to them, right? You're a slave, you're a servant, you're not an individual, and they don't have interest in you as an individual. They have interest in you for what you can do, the job you can perform, right? Dad, husband, or mom, wife, right? So do that, see what happens, and if it gets worse, then that's also your clue. So if you're here on this channel and you've done both of these things, and things are continually getting worse and worse, then it's time to consider getting out. The last thing I'll leave is this practice. I saw this over the weekend. The practice of writing feelings down and writing your true feelings down for your partner to read. Don't do this. There used to be a time where it was a good thing, but now I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. Whoa, I might. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not going to do damage so much, but it's just not your best option. So this is what I recommend. If you're having trouble expressing yourself as a person, do the exercise of writing down a letter or a note or a long message where you put your feelings down in writing, but then you don't give the writing to your partner. That's a mistake, right? Especially if it's very long. If it's more than a couple of paragraphs, it's too long. Here's why. When you give somebody a goddamn manifesto of your feelings, you're waterboarding them with a document of feelings. They're not going to want to read it. Unfortunately, we're just in a day and age where if it's more than 288 characters, people's eyes roll back into their head. And that's not necessarily your partner's fault. That's just the time we live in. People just don't read anything longer than a few paragraphs. So what you do instead, you do the exercise. You write everything down. You read it and reread it and reread it in your head. And you boil it down to the main points in your head, just so that you're familiar enough and confident enough with what you're trying to say that you can actually just say it. And spare your partner the suffocating task of reading a manifesto of feelings. Because they're not going to want to read it if it's long. But now you're forcing them to do it because it's your feelings and there's a high set of expectations. And you're going to put them in a position of doing something unpleasant to them that they don't want to do, when it would be just as easy to talk about it. And that's key, because writing stuff down and handing somebody a letter is very, very passive. It's not attractive. It shows that at a minimum, you can't talk about it. Like, talking is the way to go. It's still the number one way to communicate. When you write a letter and give somebody a letter, it's dismissive. It's like, it's not even worth talking about, or I don't want to talk to you about it. You know, do the exercise, write it down, get your thoughts organized, and then in a moment of serenity and peace in your relationship, you say, hey, I just want to talk to you about something on my mind. And don't even really preface it with anything. You just go into it, just say, hey, so the other day kind of bugged me. It's not a big deal, but, you know, finding you spanking it to Paula Deen is kind of disturbing, you know, so please don't do that. Anyways, I'm out of time. Thank you very much. Please like, comment, or share, and I'll see you on the next video.